Good morning. Welcome back to the Bookstack Coffee Chat. And today is our special first time inaugural. How many adjectives can I use to describe this? Our book club selection. So this month, if you've been following along on YouTube or here on the Facebook page, we are reading Her Mother's Hope. Ooh, let me see if I can get this up here, by Francine Rivers. So I have mentioned before that I had never read anything by Francine Rivers. And at first I had thought of us reading Redeeming Love because apparently it's being made into a movie. And there were a lot of people reading the book in advance of that. But because it's so popular again, it's another one of her backlist titles, just like Her Mother's Hope is, that we're going to be discussing today. I wasn't able to get my hands on a copy, and I figured a lot of you wouldn't be able to either. So that's why I selected Her Mother's Hope. That's one of the reasons. Another reason is because, as you know, I am currently in the process of writing a historical fiction novel. And so one of the best ways to learn how to write better is to read in your genre. And so Her Mother's Hope is a historical fiction novel based in the same time period, roughly, that my novel is. And in Her Mother's Hope, it begins in the early 1900s through World War II. So without further ado, how about we get started and dig into this? And if you are joining us live or on the replay, feel free to drop your comments in the chat. Let me know if you have read it a long time ago, if you recently read it, or if you're in the process of reading it. One caveat, if you are in the process of reading it or want to and haven't yet, we are going to be sharing details. So spoiler alert, you might want to watch this as a replay after you've finished reading it, because we will be giving away some of the good details. So let me just start, if you're unfamiliar with the book, with giving an overview. I was trying to remember the last names because I get into the characters and only remember first names. And I read this at the beginning of the month. It was so good that I read it in 2 evenings. So I couldn't put it down. And it's a relatively decent book. Let me see how many pages. Don't let the page count or the size of it scare you off, because once you start reading it, you become immersed, and it's an easy, quick read. I'm just trying to see here. Yeah, 483 pages. So, and this is the first of a series, first of 2. And I read the second one right after this one too. So again, I might be referring back to my notes because I don't want to get the 2 books mixed up. So the main 2 characters in this book, Her Mother's Hope, is Marta Schneider, which we will come to refer to as the mother, and Hildemar Rose, which is the daughter that she eventually has after she gets married. I thought this was really interesting too, this book, because the author, Francine Rivers, mentions that she based the whole plot off of questions that she had about her own mother and grandmother's relationships and their real life experiences. So while it's not biographical in nature per se, there are like some of the settings are based off of her family's history, and just the family dynamics, those questions about things that can happen between people. So yeah, if you've read the book, drop in the chat right now about what you liked most about the book, and who was your favorite character. I'm going to share some of that, my opinions, in a minute. But the book is interestingly divided into 3 sections. So the first is about Marta, her childhood and her early years, what brought her across the Atlantic. And then the second part is her daughter's story, and so her childhood and early adult years. And then the third concluding part reverts back to Marta's reflections and how she wants to proceed with her daughter in the future, and it leaves on a good cliffhanger for the next book, just so you know. And I won't give the next book away. So I'll just read the little synopsis here. Near the turn of the 20th century, fiery Marta Schneider is torn between her father's declaration that she'll never be more than a servant and her mother's encouragement to chase her dreams. Determined to fulfill her mother's hope, Marta leaves home for a better life. Young and alone, she earns her way with a series of housekeeping and cooking jobs that bring her ever closer to her dream of owning an inn. Heartbreaking news from home strengthens Marta's resolve as she moves to England and eventually to Canada. There she meets handsome Nicholas Waltert, a man just as committed as she to forging a better life in a new place. But nothing has prepared her for the sacrifices she must make for marriage and motherhood as she travels first to the Canadian wilderness and finally to the dusty Central Valley of California to raise her family. Marta's hope is to give her children a better life, but experience has taught her that only the strong survive. Her tough love is often misunderstood, especially by her oldest daughter, Hilda Mara Rose, who craves her mother's acceptance. Amid the drama of World War II, Hildy falls in love and begins a family of her own. But unexpected and tragic events force mother and daughter to face their own shortcomings and the ever-widening chasm that threatens to separate them forever. So based on that review, I was really excited to dig into it. And I was super encouraged too, because Francine Rivers is known as a Christian author, and her historical fiction spans not just the 20th century, but far back into biblical times as well. She has a number of series back set in that time period as well. So I've heard so many good things about her. I picked up this book expecting good things and received great results. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Can't recommend it highly enough. Some of the themes that I picked out as I was reading, there's a theme of different personalities, their individual hopes and dreams. Work and money is a big theme throughout the book. The family dynamics, love and loss. There's also persecution and stereotypes. Good versus evil, of course, which is almost always included in a good historical fiction book, right? She really expertly weaves in religion and faith. And then schooling and education continually comes up as well. Tough topics are addressed in the book too, and some of the topics I was surprised about, but she handled them, I felt, very well. She let you know the not severity, what's the term I'm thinking of? She got you emotionally involved without giving a lot of graphic or overly detailed information. You were able to understand what was going on without being inundated with too much information, right? Like the news tends to do today. So some of those topics that she addresses are physical abuse, rape and extramarital affair, infertility, PTSD. So some really deep topics that are handled very well here. And she weaves it not in and especially with the faith, it's not done in a preachy way, but it comes organically through the narrative, through the characters speaking. So I really enjoyed that. Another thing that I laud Francine Rivers for is her ability to show both the strengths and the weaknesses of each of her characters. So, for example, one of the main characters, Marta, the mother, in her early years and childhood and early years, she's the heroine of the story. You're rooting for her, and you just only wish the best for her, and you're on her side 100%. And then whenever you get to Hilda Mara Rose's viewpoint, all of a sudden, you don't really like Marta so much. It's like there's a switch that's been flipped, and you just don't like her nearly as much. And it's hard to remember why you liked her in the first place. But then the concluding section kind of weaves it all together. But it's so interesting how well Francine Rivers was able to do that. I thought it was interesting too how secrets seem to be a huge theme in this book. It just kept popping up over and over and over again throughout the book. And if you've read it, let me know what you thought about that as well. I made a list of some of the secrets. I mean, Marta never told Nicholas about Elise, her younger sister. Marta never told Hildemera her true feelings for her own daughter. Elizabeth, Marta's sister-in-law, tried to keep an affair from her husband and Hildemera. Bernie tried to keep his infertility from everyone. Nicholas signed contracts before telling his wife. Hildemera kept her boyfriend a secret from the family. Her eventual husband wouldn't tell her about being sent to the South Pacific. And then two boys in the story were encouraged to keep a secret about a house fire. So there were all kinds of secrets, and the repercussions of those came down into the book as well. I thought one of the most powerful sections of the book was in Hildemera Rose's section, when she was frequently humiliated by her teacher, and in one instance by her own mother, but especially by her teacher. It's just over and over, it gives examples of how she was humiliated and separated from the rest of the class in different ways. And yet she didn't complain to the parents. She didn't complain to anyone. She was more of a loner, so she kept it all inside, but she followed her father's advice whenever he had learned of one instance about what the teacher had done. And, he said to continually pray for those who persecute you. And so it shows how she constantly remembers her father's words and constantly prays, and the power of prayer. And it is revealed in the book as you go about how the teacher finds out about it, right? That's such a powerful scene of whenever the teacher overhears Hildemera Rose saying about how she's been praying for her for years. And Hildemera Rose is saying that to turn the other cheek and to pray for those who persecute you, and just the power of those words and how it affected the teacher, and how she resigned that day and never taught again, right? There's so much in this book. With almost 500 pages, you can imagine how much there is. One of my favorite quotes in the book was by Nicholas, which is Marta's husband and Hildemera Rose's father. And he says, "There's judging and there's discerning." And so that, I believe, was an instance he was speaking to Marta, because they were seeing being at odds different times between the two of them about various things, actually almost everything. But I thought that was a great quote. And one of my favorite characters that, if you've read the book, let me know what you thought of her, was Lady Daisy. I just thought she was such an interesting character. I would have loved to have learned more about her and maybe heard more of her backstory in a separate book. But Lady Daisy appears in the first section of Her Mother's Hope. And it's when Marta is striving to escape her past, escape her obligations, at least as far as her father feels that she has to the family. And so she's working as a servant, a housekeeper and cook, overall house servant for this Lady Daisy in England. And so I just loved the interaction and the insights that they shared between their conversations in that section. So let me know what you thought about Lady Daisy. I mentioned about how education was a central theme throughout the book. And one part of education was about languages, and how Marta, as a young girl, recognized how important education was, because she wanted an education, but her father pulled her out at the age of 12 and said she wasn't getting any further education than that. Meanwhile, she had dreamed of going on to college, but that wasn't going to happen for her, at least not at that point. And so, she understood that she had this drive and innate desire to learn, but since she couldn't get the actual education in college or in the classroom, she understood that if she learned languages, much more of the world would open up to her and more opportunities, especially whenever she was living in Switzerland, where the French and the German and the English all came and vacationed and worked in different capacities there. And so she understood that if she learned more than just the German that she spoke natively, that the world would open up to her. So she first moved to France and learned a little bit of French. And then she moved to England to learn English. And so I just thought it was interesting how language was always so important to her. And even after she got married and had moved to Canada, she constantly was reminding her husband to not always speak German, to practice his English and learn English. And then when they moved to the States with their family, that love of language or that importance of language seems to have hit the back burner for her. Like, she was still constantly getting on her husband about speaking German. Yet when they argued, it was always in German. And then she never encouraged her children to learn their native German or any other languages. Like, once her children were in America and learned new English, that was all she cared about with them as far as languages were concerned, right? She still felt that education was very important and encouraged all of her children to go on to college. But I just thought it was interesting that the multiple varied languages, she didn't instill that in her children. I'd love to know what your thoughts are about that as well. There was some, even though I mentioned that there were lots of heavy topics addressed, there were also lots of humorous moments as well. And one of the scenes that I thought and found humorous, well, there were three actually. It was Nicholas's reaction. Marta's husband plays a part in almost all of these, actually, all three of these actually. Just their different personalities, Marta's and Nicholas's. And first, there's when they were living in the plains of Canada, and the interaction about her telling him to go buy another gun. If you've read the book, you'll understand why that's funny. And then there's the scene when she learns how to drive in California, quite humorous. And then her husband's reaction to whenever she decides to host a children's summer camp, they come and stay for the summer at their farm to teach city boys what farm life is like. And so her husband ends up calling it summer bedlam because of all the craziness that ensues. But all of that description is quite interesting as well and funny. So I hope that sharing my thoughts with you has encouraged you, if you haven't already, to read the book. Like I said at the beginning, let me know what you liked most about it if you did read it. Share in the chats your comments. If there's something that you like that I didn't address, be sure to share that as well. And let me know your thoughts. Also, I would love to get your feedback as far as what book we should read in September. So I have a few ideas in mind, but I would love your suggestions as well. So feel free to drop those in the chat. And if you would prefer to have this done in hold the book club meetings in a private group, let me know that as well. If that's something that would encourage you and motivate you more, I would be happy to set that up as well. Just let me know. And until next time, I wish you a blessed week. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining.